All right.
Should be okay. I'm fairly centered. Yeah.
Yep, you look great. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So you're, oh, sorry.
I say there's something in here. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So your institution is the first and only medical facility in Arkansas to be approved to provide this therapy to patients with multiple myeloma. Do you foresee it becoming more widely available in your state and even in the US?
I think the CAR T-cell therapy will become more widely available in the United States. At the moment, there is only one approved CAR T-cell product for multiple myeloma, but others will follow. The manufacture of CAR T-cells is a fairly complicated process and requires designated production facilities, which are presently being ramped up and expanded by the various companies. So I think the capacity for CAR T cells will increase, to produce CAR T cells in future will increase, and there will be more products coming on market. There's currently one. Hopefully there will be a second product in the not too distant future. With the question specifically pertaining to Arkansas, CAR T cells therapy does require a specific infrastructure, which is mostly present in programs where stem cell transplants are being done. It requires the ability to collect the cells. The cells need to be shipped. They are genetically altered to become active and recognize the myeloma cells, and then sent back cryopreserved, which means frozen. And then they need to be stored, and when the time is right, thawed and administered to the patient. So at the moment, we are the only institution in Arkansas able to deliver the CAR T-cell therapy. And although I cannot foresee the future with absolute certainty, I think that for the foreseeable future, UAMS will be the only institution able to deliver this therapy.
Awesome. I think CAR T-cell therapy is so interesting. All right, so what do you think the clinical implications of this new treatment method for patients with relapsed multiple myeloma is?
Well, I think the first point to make is that there is a great unmet need in myeloma, which really pertains to two patient categories. One is patients with advanced disease who have multiple relapses and run into trouble. And several drugs have been recently approved for this particular patient group, including CAR T cells. The other group of patients where in due course CAR T cells may prove to be very interesting are patients with very aggressive myeloma up front. And many of these patients suffer from early relapse, and perhaps early additional therapy with CAR T cells may be of use in these particular patients. At the moment, CAR T cell is approved for patients who have had more than 4 lines of therapy and who have failed proteasome inhibitor therapy, immunomodulatory drugs. We're talking about drugs like Velcade and carfilzomib, pomalidomide, Revlimid, and who failed an anti-CD38 monoclonal antibody, such as daratumumab or Darzalex or isatuximab or Sarclisa. So most of the patients who are currently receiving CAR T cells have advanced disease, and I think it's a very important contribution to the therapy of a group of patients which are difficult to treat and which historically also have a poor outcome. There is, for instance, a study which is often referred to. It's a retrospective analysis of 275 patients. It's called the Mammoth trial, and you can see that patients who are refractory to many agents have a very short overall survival, varying from 5 to 11 months, depending on how many agents you're actually refractory to. So there's a great need for improvement in this patient group. And I think CAR T-cell therapy offers hope for this particular group of patients.
Awesome. Thank you for bringing up that data. What are any challenges you foresee in terms of incorporating this treatment into practice?
I think at this moment in time that there is obviously the need for a dedicated infrastructure. Then there is the question of timing the therapy. Ideally, one would like to give it at a stage when the patient has not been too heavily treated. If patients have received too much therapy, then their immune cells are not in such good shape and probably are more difficult to modify to CAR T cells, to genetically alter them. And as a result, the CAR T cell therapy may be less effective. At the time of doing this interview, I think one of the challenges is also very practical, is that we are not able to get CAR T cells for every single patient due to the fact that there is not enough production capacity in the United States at this moment in time. But hopefully these issues will be solved in the not too distant future.
Awesome. And now I'm definitely going to mispronounce this drug, but could you speak to the data we've seen with icabagene viclucil and how its FDA approval has impacted the treatment landscape for this patient population?
Okay. Can you do me a favor and repeat the question, because my printer was making noises?
Yes, of course. No worries. Totally fine. It'll give me a chance to try to pronounce this better. Could you speak to the data we've seen with icabagene viclucil and how its FDA approval has impacted the treatment landscape for this patient population?
Thank you. It is indeed a difficult name to pronounce, and we quite often use the term ide-cel, which is a little bit shorter. And the clinical trial which led to approval was called the KarMMa trial, in which 128 patients were treated. They had on average 6 lines of therapy, and virtually all patients had received a prior stem cell transplant and were what we call triple refractory, which is refractory to a proteasome inhibitor, an anti-CD38 monoclonal antibody, and immunomodulatory drug. So these were patients who were advanced. 3 different dose levels were studied, and at the highest dose level, about 1/3 of patients achieved a complete remission and had undetectable minimal residual disease. And the average follow-up is just over 2 years at this moment in time. And the median progression-free survival is in the order of 8 months. So there is a high complete response rate for this particular group of patients. And some of these responses are also durable. The better your response is, the more durable the response is as well. So I think, again, this is all good news for patients with more advanced disease, and CAR T cells are truly an exciting new treatment option for this particular patient group.
Awesome. Now, looking forward, what do you feel are some unanswered questions or unmet needs that need to be addressed with this treatment modality?
obviously, the unanswered questions and the new opportunities are, first of all, how to fit this therapy best in the existing treatment algorithm of myeloma. One could foresee giving this therapy early, for instance, patients who have an early relapse on frontline therapy. Perhaps the CAR T cells could also be used for patients who are diagnosed with quite aggressive disease, and it could be given as an additional therapy upfront, and perhaps even at some stage as a replacement of autologous stem cell transplantation. I think the other major opportunity is to understand how we can improve upon the existing CAR T-cell therapy. One of the reasons I think that the CAR T-cell therapy is so exciting is that the results are obtained with the first generation of therapy. We need to understand better how we can make the CAR T-cells better persist in the patients, how we can make them survive longer and exert their anti-myeloma effect longer. What makes myeloma cells escape from CAR T-cell therapy, and how the bone marrow microenvironment affects the efficacy of CAR T-cells. In short, there are multiple opportunities to further improve the efficacy of existing CAR T-cell therapy, and there's a lot of research going on in this area. So we can look to future innovations in terms of CAR T-cell therapy.
Great. And how could wider access to CAR T-cell therapy impact patients with multiple myeloma?
I think the wider access obviously will provide more patients access to this exciting salvage therapy. And it also gives us opportunity to not only use this therapy in the relapse refractory setting, but also in patients with an early relapse or patients with high-risk disease. Obviously, this can only be done after the appropriate trials have been completed and FDA approval has been obtained.
And do you have any last key takeaways or anything that you really want to emphasize to your colleagues?
I think particularly for the patients and also the community oncologists, it's important to know that it's an exciting time in multiple myeloma with multiple novel treatment and treatment modalities becoming available. So we have an ever-increasing arsenal of drugs and immunotherapies available to manage myeloma. And I think there's little doubt that these continued innovations will translate into better outcomes for patients.
Awesome. And that's all the questions I have for you. Do you have anything else you wanted to touch on that I didn't ask you about?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay, great.